Give him a hand. Do you hear me? Okay. Welcome. My name is Fabio Rotondo, and I'm from. Sorry. Okay, a technical problem. Just a moment.
Next time we want the speakers to perform a remote check along with TV house check. Thank you, Fabio. This is something new.
Well, but I always have my B plan because sometimes shit happens, and so I've taken with me another.
And backup remote.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, this should work. It's a bit bigger, so I'd like to use the other one since it doesn't work. As I was saying, my name is Fabio Rotondo, and I am from a company located in Novara, Italy, called OS3. And we develop software, mainly open source and with the GPL license. It's a great honor and a pleasure to have you here. And first of all, sorry for my bad English because I'm very, I have some problems with English, so I hope to be understandable. Well, there's something new in the web. What's this? Maybe, as you should already know, the web has been dominated by some great languages that have contributed to the widespread of Linux operating system and also the open source movement. The first one is PHP, that I think all of you should already know. It's a great language to develop websites and also to do just some mock-ups because you can start programming in PHP in minutes. You don't have to be a real great programmer to use PHP because PHP is simple and his learning curve is very low. And then we have Python. Python is the best language on earth, as you should already know, because every one of us is using Python. And Python is gaining momentum now as a web development platform with stuff like Django or Turbo Gears. But what we would like to have is something with the simplicity of PHP and the power of expression of Python. And about 4 years ago, I was developing my last website in PHP, and I was wondering, why should we be able to use the same ease of use of PHP with the power of Python? And so I stopped creating that website and started writing PyHP. So now we have PyHP, which is the best of both worlds. We have the simplicity of accessing and programming a web page that PHP offers, and the language Python inside, so it's great. But in a sentence, what is PyHP? Well, PyHP is Python embedded inside HTML pages, server-side, just like PHP is. So, in the next 20-25 minutes, I'm introducing you PyHP as the new development web platform, and LIWE. LIWE is our framework that we use to develop in a very fast way websites, and it's a great framework, very big, huge, so we just can give you some hints about the framework because it's too big to fit in a 1 hour presentation. And I'm also here to show you how PyHP, especially PyHP, can help you in dating girls. Well, maybe not this kind of girl, but I hope that PyHP will be useful anyway. But what does exactly PyHP does? Well, we have a new tag that we can embed inside HTML pages, like this one. as you see, is just PyHP. It's very similar to the PHP tag, but it has a Y inside because, of course, we are embedded Python. And then you can, since Python is very, I can say, cares a lot about white spaces, you have to insert a new line and then start writing Python code just like you were inside a normal script, Python script. So, for example, the standard hello world would look like this. You see, after the PyHP tag, a new line, and then you start directly from the leftmost side of the screen because you cannot just start indenting what you want because Python cares about spaces. And then when you have finished embedding Python inside your page, you can use the same, exactly the same tag you would use with PHP. So, do you know this TV show? It's called The Big Bang Theory, and if you don't know the show, it's about 4 nerds living in the same floor with a very pretty girl, and they have some problems relating with her because she doesn't really care about what the nerds cares. And I think that with PyHP, you could improve the situation of dating girls because there are a lot of some techniques that I'm going to explain right now. And the very important thing is that you should try to stop being, we all should try to stop being nerds and starting to be geeks, and so to be more attractive. And for example, suppose that a very pretty girl approaches you and your friends and asking you, oh, what do you do for a living? And your friends start, I don't know, we develop a website with PHP, ASP.NET, Java, and the girls, okay, this is something that I've already heard, some friends of mine just do this. And you reply, I'm writing websites using PyHP. So maybe with a masculine voice, and like this. I'm writing website with PyHP, and she is of course interested because she never heard about PyHP since it's new technology. So you gain 1 or 2 coolest points just because you're writing PyHP. So maybe you should try it, but. There's also another thing about PyHP that makes PyHP so great for you. If you ever have programmed in PHP, you know that with the major release of the language, they always break compatibility with the best. And this is very, very annoying if you have a very big code base because you have to test all your old sources to see if they still work with the new PHP version. Well, I'm using Python since 1997, and some of my old scripts still work on Python 2.0 series that there is today. So this is what I call compatibility. And also there is another thing that annoys me a lot about PHP. And it's consistency. Consistency is something that really should change. Is annoying because sometimes, for example, with the array methods, there are some functions that takes the array that they have to manipulate as the first argument of the script, the first argument of the function, and sometimes the array is just the last argument. So every time you have to write code in PHP, you need a reference with you because you cannot remember correctly all the parameters where they are. While in Python, I think that they have made a very good design pattern because always Python is very consistent. Also, duck typing is great. So sometimes maybe you don't know how a special object just works, but you should try with handling it in the same way as another object, and usually it works. So it's great. But PyHP is also important because we have not focused our attention on creating a very big and huge and important language, because Python is already a great language. So we just focused our efforts on creating something that is easy to learn. And since we take the same approach of PHP, this is easy to learn, because one of the point of strength of PHP was the fact that you can start creating web pages in minutes. And with PyHP you can do the same, exactly the same, but using Python as the scripting language. And this is amazing. Also, we focused our efforts in just the web parts, because all the rest is covered by the libraries included in Python. So PyHP is really web-minded. And as soon as I'm going to show you what really PyHP is, you could start thinking about, is this just this thing? Is so small? Well, it's small, yes, but there is Python behind it. So let's see. PyHP publishes a class to the web programmer that's called PyHP. PyHP just has these attributes and methods I'm going to show you. The first one, okay, is PyHP.get. This is a standard Python dictionary containing all the get variables of the form that the user sends you. And in PyHP.post, you have all the post variables of the form that the user sent you. In uploads, there is a list of files with attributes that you can use to get the files from the form. In cookies, you can handle input and output cookies, so send back cookies to the browser. In the function .log offers you a good way to debug your scripts, your PyHP scripts, and with Dash you can handle user sessions for free. So since every web app today needs to handle sessions, it's a good thing that PyHP already implements a standard session system inside the language, so you don't have to think about how to use sessions. We'll see later a very short example on how the sessions and the other things work, but you see they are extremely easy. It's amazing. And this is just everything you have to know about PyHP. So I think that you can really start using PyHP in 5 minutes. 5 minutes because the text editor takes 2 minutes to start up, okay? Let's see for some examples of the language. Okay, this is the standard hello world with some PyHP inside. As you can see, there is some HTML code, then the PyHP tag, and then I'm printing the current time, just doing the standard Python import for time, and then doing time.ctime. So, as you can see, you can use all your standard Python modules inside PyHP. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all there inside Python. And also, you output to the user in the same way you should output to the standard script with the print statement. So it's great. Now, let's see something more complex. This is a very standard form. It is a form which has, here there is a post with a field called field 2, and here there is a get request with field 1. If you want to see the code, it's quite simple. Since get and post are two dictionary, you can have get just to have the field 1, and in post you can get field 2. And if you want, you could use the get standard method of the dictionary to have a default value. By the way, this is very great for security because distinguishing from get and post variables, we are able, we the user can just do some string injections, for example, by sending something using the get properties, and we will not find these variables inside the post. So now we see an example of cookie. It's a bit long. I don't want to be here too much with this, but as you can see, there is a default path you can set using defaults, which is a very special dictionary that's able to quickly set the attributes to cookie, and then you have create to create a cookie, and you can set any kind of data inside it, and it will be serialized and unserialized for you in the cookie to the browser. And this is an example of the upload. Here there is an upload file, and usually the share util, we are just copying the file inside another destination. As you can see, there is inside the item where we iterate on with either values, there is an attribute called file, which is the temporary file name. While in file name, there is the file name that the user, the original file had when it was posted. Here there is the debug. As you can see, there are some. Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, the log has just some attributes to log. I'm not able to go back with my presentation. Sorry, I have written also the presentation system, so it's that's. And this is how the session works. You have session start to start sessions, because since session sets a new cookie and sends it back to the user, maybe you don't want it in all your scripts. So you have to explicitly set the session start. And once you have the session is actually a standard Python dictionary, and you can set all your keys, values you want, and they are stored server side, not client side. The client just gets the session cookie. And so you can use it, for example, to log users, because once the login function has been executed, you can just set the user ID and store all the attributes inside the session. Now, okay, so I think that for these things, PyHP is cool. Because as you can see from the examples that are very, very simple, PyHP is very easy to learn and to approach. But today web development also requires a lot of functionalities, because now websites are web applications, so are very complex, and you can try all these things by yourself. But I would suggest you to come to the training talk we are going to do tomorrow from 9 to 13. And it will be great, because you'll be able to create a website using PyHP and the LIWE framework in 4 hours. We are going to be a bit fast, because it's not that easy, but I hope that you can get the point. And if you want, you can download anything from Overcode, since everything is open source with GPL and Apache license. So here there is PyHP, the LIWE framework is here, and I think that at some point you will also need the OS3 PyLib, so go and get it. And PyHP comes in 3 flavors. You can use it with mod PyHP, which is written in C and integrates with Apache, or you can use the more convenient, in my opinion, WSGI Module. So you can use it with any WSGI server out there. And you can also use PyHP standalone by using WSGI ref inside Python. You can use PyHP standalone. This is great to develop your website, because you don't even need a web server. You can just test your scripts without problems. Of course, I'm not suggesting you to use the standalone version for deployment, because it's weak, but it's great anyway to develop by yourself. Now, just some words about the LIWE framework, because it's too big to be explained in a 1 hour presentation, especially considering the fact that it's so huge that, like Django, for example, so you cannot expect to have the LIWE framework explained in just one session. But anyway, LIWE has been thought from the ground up to have some very cool technology inside. So, for example, LIWE implements Ajax as its primary communication protocol. Everything inside the LIWE uses Ajax and JSON to communicate. It is so deeply embedded inside the framework that you could have a very hard time not using Ajax and JSON to communicate. And the second thing is template engine. We have a good template engine that's great from both server side and client side. So our JavaScript scripts use the same template engine as the server class. And then we have voice recognition. Do you know any other web framework out there that has voice recognition? Neither do I. In fact, I'm joking. There is no voice recognition inside LIWE. I'm sorry. Maybe maybe next release. Okay. And then we have modules. LIWE is completely modular. Everything is just a brick that you can bend inside other bricks. So it's a good framework, in my opinion. Okay, this is a very rough idea of how the LIWE framework has been created. There is the server side, where there is the server implementation of the LIWE modules. Implementation currently are both in PyHP and in standard C language. We have a closed source implementation in C language for a client of ours, a customer of ours that has about, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000 requests per minute. So the PyHP wasn't fast enough. And the client side. The client side uses OS3 GSLib and OS3 WWL. WWL is these are some libraries that have these names because they started about in 2004. So now they still have this name, but you should consider this as the JSLib of the LIWE system, and the WWL is the web widget library. Is a sort of some widgets for the web. And modules communicate from client to server side using the Ajax protocol and the JSON protocol. Now these are some examples of our widgets. This is the color picker. Sometimes they may seem to be very rough and not very, I don't know, sexy. But you can easily style them using CSS, so you can do almost anything. This is the drag box. It is a drag box because there are two different digs, destination, source and destination, where you can drag and drop elements from one side to the other freely. And these elements can be anything. In this example, there are just two rectangles, but they can be, for example, windows or images, anything that can be inside a div. And then we have a very small HTML editor, just like FCK editor or something. Why we have written another HTML editor? Simply because the other editors do a lot of console warning error on JavaScript, and we don't want warnings in our scripts, so we have just written a very small editor. Then there is a suggest, where you can start typing and having some results via Ajax query or something. Text. This is a classical example of how bad they look. Okay, these are our tags and they look bad, but this is the same text style inside the website. And you can see they are very different, but it's the same object. Just some CSS magic. And this is our tree that is very dynamic. In fact, you can also, the folders can be expanded using Ajax query. And our uploader. At the moment, the uploader is being written in Flash, but we are experimenting with HTML5 to create a multi-file uploader without the request requiring any plugin. And to finish, I just put some of our websites we created using the LIWE framework. This is using the C implementation. Is from the brand Legge Italia, which is the biggest brand in Italy about professional law, and this is the URL. This is Fumetti Novara, likes comics in Novara. It's just, as you can see, the same things like news and tabs looks completely different, but the ecosystem is the same. It's always lively. This is it's not very good looking, but we have rewritten this website using LIWE and PyHP, but our customer wanted the same graphics, so we didn't change. This is an Italian newspaper, I think. Yeah. And this is a website we are still working on. The great thing is that it's all CSS, CSS3, and HTML5, so it's very good looking, but there isn't very much graphics in it. And well, as a shameless plug, this is our website, and some news are from the last year because we are not updating our website very much. But anyway, you can see how here the news looks different from the other websites. Then we have another website about laws, another customer of ours, and the last one, which is Ultra Toys, which is a shop, an online e-commerce site. It was the first one using Ajax. The commerce site is an e-commerce site completely written using Ajax. And this is all CSS free. It has just received a new look because it was starting to be a bit outdated. Sorry. Okay, that's all. I hope you have enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.
So in theory, WSGI modules should work on Google App Engine, which is a WSGI server, but sometimes there's glitches. For example, the WSGI module is written to require Python 2.6 or 2.7. It will not work on App Engine, which is still constrained on 2.5. How's PyHP? Have you tested it on Google App Engine?
We didn't test with Google App Engine yet, especially for some problems with the database, because we are using, usually we use MySQL, and we haven't tested with other kind of databases. No, it doesn't depend on MySQL. We have 8 different database implementations with Postgres and Oracle, but I have to admit that at the moment the only one to really test is MySQL. And another thing is that some of our modules are using features of Python 2.6 and Python 2.7. This is because actually now our implementation requires at least Python 2.7. I don't know if we are using something strange. The problem is that usually we have the latest version of Python 2 installed, so we don't care about and also our servers have the latest Python implementation. So sometimes we use features without even knowing it because they are just there.
Okay. Any other question?
community to have the opportunity to reach a wider range of users, because one of the strengths of PHP is that it was extremely easy to start with. And now with PyHP we have the same easiness. So I think that it can be a good starting point for graphics that, or I don't know, web developers that just start tinkering with the website to try PyHP if they don't know. It's a great opportunity.
I think if you want to give the community, you need to work on making it work. Because 5,000 students. Personal opinion, 5,000 is per minute for free engine. Where do you get 5,000 hits per minute for free? No system administration required. You don't need to own a server, but you need to stick with Python 2.5 and know MySQL.
Okay.
So what's easier? Buying a server, hiring a sysadmin? Not that easy.
Yes. No, you're right.
Oh, what this?
Hey, do you have any, how do you do testing for these applications, like unit testing and functional testing, like Selenium and things like that?
Well, I haven't shown you how the modules are written. This is a topic that we'll cover in the training. But usually modules are standard Python classes with the docstring inside, and you can test them without, you just run in the doc tester. So we cover almost every single function. Of course, then when you are online, where the inputs come from different sources, sometimes something is not tested, so we have some bugs, but usually we test all the functions.
I actually have one question.
Okay.
So, something more fundamental. PHP has widely been renowned for encouraging writing spaghetti code. You know, the designer is a designer, he knows about web design, and then he starts writing Python code and mixes every kind of possible logic into the view, into the HTML, into the file. And further development in many web frameworks, like Django, decided to take the template and to limit the possibility of the designer. Java server pages originally permitted to embed Java code into the JSP, and then they moved to the preferred way of allowing just access to expressing language. So how does PHP now in 2011 prevent this kind of programming approach from happening?
Okay. The answer is that PyHP doesn't do anything to prevent you from writing bad code, because even PHP now doesn't prevent you from writing it. But the LIWE framework does. But it's two different things, because LIWE framework could be used with PHP if the server-side modules could be written. Because, as I said, the standard communication protocol is Ajax and JSON. So every server-side language could do. But PyHP needs to remain easy to use and to approach like PHP was. So nobody stops you from writing spaghetti code, even if you can't write too much spaghetti code using Python instead of PHP. The page will remain more readable anyway, in my opinion.
I would like to point out that unless I have to, I never use Django anymore because I'm not a designer. I know what to code where, and not being able to do that because Django is trying to save me from bad programming is offensive. I use Jinja 2 or Mako, which are supersets of Django without the kind of, it's like, you're not supposed to, but you want to shoot yourself in the foot. You're a programmer, not a designer. Go ahead. That's, I don't like having to have training wheels on my bicycle. I was very happy to have training wheels in my bicycle when I was 5 years old. It saved my knees from scrapes. Now I kind of know how to go on a bicycle, you know?
Well,
I think that matter is still an open question in the programming community, not just in the Python one, because somebody thinks like you that they want the full power of the environment in the templates. Somebody else says, no, I don't want the full power, I want the full power to be in the business model somewhere else. I don't have an answer for this. Okay, either. It was just something I was asking
I would say
you.
that PyHP is just something that embeds Python inside HTML, so you can do almost anything. While the LIWE system, LIWE framework, has a very great separation between the model and the view. So you cannot do very much of messing things up. Okay.